Jewish people base their claim to the land of Israel, or at least for premises. 1. God promised the land to the patriarch Abraham. 2. The Jewish people settled and developed the land. 3. The international community granted political sovereignty in Palestine to the Jewish people, and 4. The territory was captured in defensive wars. The term Palestine is believed to be derived from the Philistines, an Aegean people who, in the 12th century BC, settled along the Mediterranean coastal plain of what is now Israel and the Gaza Strip. In the 2nd century AD, after crushing the last Jewish revolt, the Romans first applied the name Palestina to Judea, the southern portion of what is now called the West Bank, in an attempt to minimize Jewish identification with the land of Israel. The Arabic word Philastin is derived from this Latin name. The 12 tribes of Israel formed the first constitutional monarchy in Palestine about 1000 BC. The second king, David, first made Jerusalem the nation's capital. Although eventually Palestine was split into two separate kingdoms, Jewish independence there lasted for 212 years. This is almost as long as Americans have enjoyed independence in what has become known as the United States. Even after the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem and the beginning of the exile, Jewish life in Palestine continued and often flourished. Large communities were re-established in Jerusalem and Tiberias by the 9th century. In the 11th century, Jewish communities grew in Rafah, Gaza, Ashkelon, Jaffa, and Caesarea. Many Jews were massacred by the Crusaders during the 12th century, but the community rebounded in the next 2 centuries as large numbers of rabbis and Jewish pilgrims immigrated to Jerusalem and the Galilee. Prominent rabbis established communities in Safed, Jerusalem, and elsewhere during the next 300 years. By the early 19th century, years before the birth of the modern Zionist movement, more than 10,000 Jews lived throughout what is today Israel. When Jews began to immigrate to Palestine in large numbers in 1882, fewer than 250,000 Arabs lived there, and the majority of them had arrived in recent decades. Palestine was never an exclusively Arab country, although Arabic gradually became the language of most of the population after the Muslim invasions of the 7th century. No independent Arab or Palestinian state ever existed in Palestine. When the distinguished Arab-American historian, Princeton University professor Philip Hitti, testified against partition before the Anglo-American Committee in 1946, he said, "There is no such thing as Palestine in history. Absolutely not. In fact, Palestine is never explicitly mentioned in the Quran. Rather, it is called the Holy Land al-Ad al-Muqaddash." Prior to partition, Palestinian Arabs did not view themselves as having a separate identity. When the first Congress of Muslim Christian Associations met in Jerusalem in February 1919 to choose Palestinian Rep.